Hey, what's up, fellow gamers? It's B Chambers coming at you with my top 5 games from last gen. And yes, I can actually say last gen now because the PS4 and Xbox One are out. So disclaimer before we jump in. This is my top 5, my personal, opinionated top 5 list. There's no objectivity here. There's no scoring system that I use to rate games to figure out what was objectively better than something else. It's just my personal opinion on what I thought were the best games that I experienced this generation. And before we get into the top 5, I'd like to give a couple of honorable mentions. First up, Mass Effect 2. Good God, what an excellent experience. Not just a game, but going into that last mission, y'all, I was so psyched because I actually cared about the people on my team who I had the potential to lose if I made a bad decision as a leader. Having been in real combat, I can relate to that. So maybe that's why it had a stronger pull on me. But I thought that was excellent. But then we get to Mass Effect 3 and it's garbage. Not only was the ending whack, and I'm not talking about because it was incomplete, because it was just whack. And the progression of the story was whack because they rushed too much. So I feel that the whole body of work kind of pulled away from that individual experience that is Mass Effect 2. You can disagree with that philosophy, that's fine, but that's why it's not on the list. Next up is Saints Row 4, close but no Cuban. Saints Row 4 got everything right about risk, incentive, reward in a game for like the first 10 to 12 hours. And then they made the game too long with too much filler and then had missions at the end where they take your powers away. And I was like, and for what? Like the whole point of the game was me spending time developing these powers that now you've taken from me. Garbage. I was so mad. Like I had that game so slated to be at the very top of my list for this generation, and that just bumped it off the list completely. Next and actually last up, Dark Souls. When Castlevania met Zelda. Man, this game is so excellent if you have the time and the patience to invest into it. But unfortunately, it does not give enough proverbial carrots to incentivize play beyond the punishing sticks that it hits you with throughout the game. So let's get into the numbered list. My top 5, if you will. Number 5. Star Ocean: The Last Hope. This game nailed giving me a real incentive to play. The achievements were really just a cover for multiple rewarding tasks that actually gave the player a sense of accomplishment once complete. Knocking out the achievements often had an in-game reward attached to it that made it worth the effort. On top of that, you have the excellent combat system that made leveling less like a chore and more something you actually wanted to do. This is another game where fun factor far outweighs the aesthetic shortcomings of the game as a whole. Plus, any game that can get 500 plus hours out of me has got to be some kind of dope. Number 4, Battlefield 3. I typically don't go for multiplayer games. It's not really my thing. I'm very extroverted. I do like interacting with people, but not usually when I'm playing games. Like when I was a kid, I was the dude that enjoyed playing Star Wars and Transformers more by myself than I did with my friends. Call me crazy, but a game for me is an experience to develop a virtual version of myself in ways that are easier and quicker to pull off than I can do in real life. That's what I get out of games, being immersed into a world where I can develop myself. So with that said, I'm leading into why this is on the top of my list. Battlefield 3 got almost 200 hours of play out of me. 200 hours of multiplayer play. No other game has ever been able to do that. So this game had to be dope. It was more tactical than most shooters, and I believe it was better for it, and just overall an excellent game. Number 3, Two Worlds. Before you ask, yes, I am insane. See, I believe in this crazy notion that ultimately a game should be judged less for its narrative and presentation and more for how fun the mofo actually is to play. And Two Worlds, if you look past all of its flaws, is ridiculously fun to play. It gives great incentive to the player to explore a huge world, find better loot, use the loot you have to make better loot, and just play the game and experience the fun combat. And how you can actually develop your character to your liking. Unlike many European RPGs that hamper you and force you to choose a path, you can be whatever the heck you want in Two Worlds. So my hat is off to the good people at Reality Pump and Topware Interactive. Number 2, Tales of Vesperia. Tales of Vesperia was my total package game from this past generation. Had dope combat? Check. Deep leveling and customization systems? Check. Incentive to keep playing and see all the game has to offer? Check. This game was actually a completionist's dream come true. So not to mention, it had dope graphics even by today's standards and one of the best casts I've seen in an RPG, and a story that dares to break away from several cliches in its total delivery. I can't say enough good things about Tales of Vesperia. If you've not played it, and if you like JRPGs, Go do it now. Number 1, The Last of Us. If you want to know all the details about why this game is my number 1 game, be sure to check out my full review for the game on this channel. To keep things short and as sweet as possible, The Last of Us is quite possibly the best game I've ever played in my life. It mixes so many elements from my favorite games like the original Metal Gear, not Metal Gear Solid, the original one, and classic and contemporary RPGs. Not to mention a story that remains gripping from start to finish and hosts one of the best endings I've ever, if not the best ending I've ever seen in a game. I can't think of a single game in history that I think is better than The Last of Us, even with some of its flaws, which I'm aware of. I'm not just a hype man. So that'll do it, my friends. My top 5 games of last gen. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to agree or disagree in the comments. I'd love to know what y'all's top games were. Usually I try to make content that evokes discussion because I'm more interested in the discussion than just shoving videos down your throat. So be sure to give us your tops, and I'll be on the lookout for my top 3 Xbox Live arcade games from last gen coming later, hopefully today. But until then, this is B Chambers signing off. We'll see you on the next A7 video. Peace and Godspeed.